Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lunar New Year cooking workshop. We're so glad you could all be here tonight. And I'm going to start us off with just a couple of housekeeping things. So first things first, we know you're going to have a lot of questions and we want you to be very interactive. This is meant to bring us all together. So please go ahead and put any of your questions there in the Q&A. We're also going to be asking you some questions so that we can get to know you just a little bit more. And so go ahead and put those over in the chat. We are also want to let you know we're recording this and we'll make it available for you to watch again and again. When we hold events like this, we then have them captioned, and that takes a little bit of time. So as soon as we get it back from being captioned, we will make sure to let you know, and so you'll be able to watch this again. You should have hopefully received the recipes in advance so that you could follow along. If you haven't, we're going to be putting a link here in the chat, and so you'll be able to get the recipes and see what the ingredient list is as you follow along today, so that you can try them again and again and perfect these in your own homes. I'm Nicole Lang. I am an alum of San Francisco State University from the class of 1993. Do we have any other 1993 people in the class? We can discuss what our commencement was like. I also work at the 2011, someone much later than me, 1990s. Oh, good. We've got some 1990s in that decade in the house. I also work in university events and alumni relations. And tonight I am joining you from the campus. It stopped raining. We're getting a bit of a reprieve. So the campus is still here. We didn't wash away. So we're glad. Where are you joining us from? And what's it like there? And I'm keeping an eye on this chat over here. I think I saw 1971. Someone's speaking, and to 2021. This is what we like to see from everyone. And people are joining us from, let's see, San Diego, Washington. It's snowing in Oregon. Sorry. Right here in San Francisco. Oh, it's Vegas. Nice. All right. There's some warmth there. Okay. Now, based on all this really positive feedback we've gotten from this type of event, we plan to continue doing this kind of online content. But this is where we can use your help. What would you like to see? What topics interest you? More cooking, sports, book clubs, political analysis. We're really fortunate because we're a university. So right here on campus, we have experts on almost anything, either among our faculty, our staff, or with you, our alumni. So give us some ideas in the chat and let us know what your expertise is. If there's something that maybe you'd like to share with your fellow alumni, let us know, and we can follow up with you. So these incredible events, really the credit, while I'm here on the face of it, the credit really goes to the amazing alumni relations and events team. And so I want to especially thank Ken Maeshiro for conceiving of and planning tonight's event, and to Charlene Del Muro and Marciana Flores for making sure that everything runs perfectly and looks sensational. So now, tonight, in honor of the Lunar New Year, we will be learning how to make pork buns and sticky rice. And this is the year of the rabbit. Those, I don't know if you're watching, those born in the year of the rabbit are said to be talented at many things. They are affectionate people who are often excelling in forming close relationships, and they also appreciate tranquility and seek out peace. During the pre-show, I don't know if you saw what year you are, what sign you are. I'm the year of the dog. Our characteristics are generosity, loyalty, and the ability to work well with others. I'm sure there were things on there listed that I also could work on, but I'm not going to pay attention to those. I'm only going to look at the positive. Before I introduce our cooking instructor, Sybil, who's right there, ready to go for us, I wanted to share some exciting ways that you could stay involved with SF State. My colleague Charlene Delmira will be posting a link in the chat with more details about these volunteer opportunities. So one of the ways you can get involved is to review student scholarships in the month of May. On average, the Alumni Association awards over $200,000 to 100 students each year. And the great thing about this volunteer opportunity is you can do it remotely. All you need is a computer. Volunteers will be asked to evaluate at least 10 scholarship applications, which amounts to about 2 to 4 hours of work. And you can choose the scholarships you wish to evaluate. I've done it. Many people on the team have done it. It's really a valuable experience to get to know some of our students a little bit more and hear their stories. The other opportunity we have is to become a mentor. Volunteers will advise and guide current students along their academic journey. Other ways to interact with students include sharing your love of SF State by encouraging prospective students to tour campus and calling them to explain why they should attend SF State, and congratulating future Gators when they get their admissions offer. And then one final opportunity is to help us with our community service and advocacy. For those who have generously donated to SF State, you can help your alma mater by sharing your donor story to help us raise funds for a variety of SF State causes and initiatives. You can also help us advocating for increased funding for the university and for the California State University. As I mentioned earlier, more details are available in the chat. If you have further questions, you can contact Ephraim Ozer at SEOZER@sfsu.edu, and we'll get her email also there in the chat box. Okay, let's get started. I get to now introduce Sybil Yang. Sybil is a California native, and she currently works in the Department of Hospitality and Tourism Management for the Lamb Family College of Business. She holds degrees from the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley and from Cornell University. Her research interests are consumer behavior and behavioral economics, and her research is focused on evaluating the efficiency of restaurant menu boards, and wine label design tactics. Her design and pricing recommendations have been directly implemented in hundreds of menus across the United States. Sybil's current work explores consumer decision making and how decoys can be used to change consumer behavior. Sybil's work has been reported on and featured in the Wall Street Journal, Nation's Restaurant News, Restaurants and Institutions, and Women's Health Journal. Sybil is also the driving force behind the Lamb Family College of Business's annual Entrepreneurship Symposium and Innovation Pitch Competition, which this year is going to be held on Friday, April 28th. I also really like to always mention Sybil's hobbies so that I can get inspired to try something new. So outside of work, she enjoys mountaineering, rock climbing, sailing, and springboard diving, and teaching us all how to cook and bake. So everyone, please help me welcome Dr. and Professor and Chef Sybil Yang. Welcome, Sybil.
Thank you, Nicole. Always such a glowing introduction. Hopefully I can live up to it. So
I mean, I have to, just so you all know, I have to narrow down. I could spend the entire hour just describing all of your wonderful attributes. So.
Well, welcome. I think Lunar New Year. This was like one of the first types of cooking demos that I partnered with the Alumni Association on. So I'm super happy to be back. And this time for Bao, the Chinese barbecue pork buns, and for zongzi, the Chinese sticky rice in the bamboo leaves, two of my just absolute favorites. So let's just get to it. I know the recipes got put into the chat earlier on in the chat roll. And I tried to customize these recipes so that they're a lot more approachable, and where you don't have to go out and buy just a ton of ingredients that you're going to really only use for this one recipe. So Some of them, they are modifications from what you might typically see out there, but it makes for a very approachable and much easier recipe to execute than you might find in other places. Okay, so I'm going to start off by making the filling for the tasao ball. When you go and have Chinese dim sum anywhere, there are just certain dishes you have to order. One of them is the xiajiao. It's like a shrimp wrapped in a clear rice wrapper. There's a sao mai, which is like a pork and shrimp mixture that you have to get. And then the third one really is the tasao ball that you have to get. There are traditionally two types of tasao ball, and there's a steamed one and then there's a baked one. We're going to make the steamed one because you got to eat it faster. Literally, you don't have to bake it. Steaming is a lot faster in terms of the cooking method. We're going to go ahead and make the filling first because the filling is going to have to cool. We're going to start by making a kind of an onion infused oil to start off with. So I'm just going to go ahead and heat up some of this oil and throw in both white onions and scallions at the same time. And the idea behind this is we really just want to get the flavor out from the onions and then the scallions enough to kind of flavor that oil. And it might seem a little bit wasteful, but then we're just going to set these onions aside for, I don't know, maybe you want to stick them into a stock or so afterwards. So I'm waiting to hear a little bit of sizzle. Don't necessarily want any color off of this thing, really just to sweat out some of the liquid from these. And if you guys can smell my kitchen, especially since I'm on an induction burner and not on my stove right now, so there's no ventilation, it's really smelling like onions.
Well, that's wonderful. I'll never turn that down.
Right? If you're wondering, there's a trinity of flavors that people associate with Asian cuisine or with Chinese cuisine, which is scallions, ginger, and garlic together.
Well, Kimmy in the chat has mentioned that she really appreciates the modifications for newbies. So thank you for doing such a great job, always making these very accessible.
At this point, okay, some of the onion is starting to look a little translucent. So it's no longer that bright white. It's starting to look a little kind of translucent-y. At this point, I'm gonna take the big pieces off. I'm gonna leave some of it in, and there's just this bare residue of oil that's like strongly flavored now. Now I'm gonna start making the sauce itself. So I'm gonna turn the heat down a little bit, and soy sauce, I'm just going to use the stereotypical kikkoman here because that's what I have available. A lot of recipes specify light versus dark and ask you to do a proportion of each one. There really isn't a difference between the two except for literally the color. And just for simplicity's sake, you really only need one. Okay, so soy sauce. And next you can either use a hoisin sauce or an oyster sauce, okay? Whichever one you have handy, the flavor profile will be relatively similar for both of them. The hoisin will be sweeter. So I'm gonna go for the slightly sweeter taste to this. Go ahead and put hoisin sauce in.
Was that available just at your regular grocery store?
Yeah, so hoisin sauce definitely will be available at a regular grocery store. Oyster sauce, maybe. Like I would say there's like an 80% chance that oyster sauce will be there. Oyster sauce has really made its way into like general, American flavor profiles just because it can be used in a lot of different types of Asian cooking. So a lot of supermarkets carry it now. Then I'm going to add in some water just to kind of loosen everything up. So half a cup of the water. And at this point, I'm going to stir just to get everything, just super simple. And a little bit more sugar. So this is 2 teaspoons of sugar. Very liquidy. And I'm going to bring this up to a boil. So the way this sauce works is you're going to make the liquidy sauce part and toss in the already chopped up tasao into it. Since the tasao is already a barbecue, it's already cooked all the way through. The sauce isn't responsible for cooking the tasao at all. So at this point, you're really just making the sauce to thicken. So I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Let's check out the miracle of an induction burner and see how quickly we can get this thing up to a boil.
How do you like an induction burner? I know that's the way we're all supposed to be.
Oh, I actually like it lots. There's a slight learning curve because it does boil very, very quickly. So this is essentially on medium heat right now, and it's already coming up to boil relatively quickly. Once it comes up to a boil, okay, as it's getting there, I'm going to go ahead and combine cornstarch into cold water. I'm going to do this slightly off camera because turn this down. Okay, so cornstarch into cold water. We're essentially making a cornstarch slurry here. And this is the thickening agent of choice for most Chinese cooking out there. Don't put the cornstarch into hot water because that will gelatinize the starch immediately. So by diluting the cornstarch and dissolving it inside cold water, and then putting it into the hot liquid, just makes sure that we won't have any clumps inside the sauce. So now that I'm swirling my chopsticks inside this cornstarch water, I don't feel any more lumps at this point. And this is when I'm going to slowly drizzle it in while stirring. And again, stirring while slowly drizzling, just make sure that I don't get any lumps. And you see how quickly this essentially turns into a gel.
Yeah.
That's how quickly cornstarch works. So we're going to go ahead and cook this a little bit longer. So I'm at low medium heat right now. I still have some bubbles. I'm just going to cook it a little bit. I want to cook that starchy flavor out. So I'm going to just keep on stirring.
And cornstarch is your preferred kind of thickening agent for this type of?
Yeah, so for Chinese food, right? Yeah. For Chinese food, overwhelmingly it's cornstarch.
Okay.
Cornstarch as a thickener, just because it does work so fast. Other popular thickening agents are cornstarch, are tapioca starch or potato starch. Each type of starch has different characteristics. So cornstarch, you get this kind of gel type of look, halfway translucent-y type of look. So a lot of like cherry pie or strawberry pies, that kind of gel looking gooiness that goes on inside those pies, those are thickened with cornstarch. But if you're making like an apple pie and it's kind of more of an opaque color, those are thickened with flour. So different starches have different thickening properties. And they'll have slightly different mouthfeels on them too. Okay, now that this has cooked off a little bit, I'm just going to throw in the tasao. And the recipe that is distributed calls for just already made tasao. And Ken had actually asked the question, well, where do you get the tasao? I actually just got this at Ranch 99. So very imminently available at any Chinese supermarket that has a deli section. It's not that tasao is difficult to make. It's actually relatively easy. You marinate and then you just like roast it off inside your oven and then, you know, glaze a couple of times while it's roasting inside the oven. The problem is to make tasao, you need a lot of ingredients. So unless it's kind of like Indian food, you got to commit to buying so many spices that it ends up being like $30, $40 a pound if you're buying all those ingredients. And if you're just doing this one-off, it's better if you just buy the tasao. One thing to note with the tasao is I made this at home, and you see that it's not completely bright red like that. A lot of this bright red color is actually from food coloring. Some very, very traditional places will use a red yeast rice in order to color the tasao, but this very insanely bright redness, that's actually from food coloring.
And is
however you
that
feel.
just a tradition? Is that why?
Well, the
Traditionally
very
red or-
traditional type is you're actually using red yeast rice, which
Got it,
is
okay.
more difficult to find and it's more expensive. And it takes a little bit more time in the marinade to achieve that type of color. And so a lot of times, you know, you just do the fast marinade and throw in a bunch of red food coloring to make it work. So at this point, literally just coat the tassel, okay, and we're gonna let it cool and chill. So we need this thing to be cooled down all the way before we wrap them up inside the bun. You don't want this to be hot. You don't want it to be warm because the dough for the tassel ball actually has yeast inside of it and it has baking powder inside of it. So any premature heat on the dough is going to mess with the fluffiness and the rise of the bun. So this thing needs to cool off completely before we move on to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer it into another dish, and I'm going to go ahead and pop this inside the refrigerator.
We had someone asking what's your favorite cookware brand?
Oh, for pots and pans?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. For pots and pans, it really depends. With like, you know, the regular these things, love All Clad. It's expensive, but it will last you generations.
Okay.
Like literal generations. These things will outlast me, and they will be gifted on to a next generation. I also love a Le Creuset. You just kind of need a stainless steel Dutch oven.
Which should last your lifetime, correct?
Oh, a cast iron pan, literally a cast iron pan. Everybody needs that. And mine is just like the Lodge cast iron pan that you can get from Walmart. Super, super simple. Trying to think what other type of cookware we all have out there. I don't know, what other cookware are we thinking of? I am married to the KitchenAid ecosystem, so you know, the KitchenAid stand mixer and all the attachments to the stand mixer. That's all me. Okay, let's start with the dough now. Okay,
really quickly. So you were using, is it you're saying tassel? Tassal.
I'm saying tassel. So I'm saying it the Mandarin way.
Okay.
And if you type it into Google or if you need to look it up, it's CHARSIU.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, I don't speak Cantonese, but I think the Cantonese version is Tasiu. Again, don't speak Cantonese.
I will write that in.
Sorry for all the Cantonese speakers out there.
Yeah.
And the tassel part refers to like the roasted pork, the barbecue pork part, and of course the ball is the bun part of it. So the recipe that you guys got or are getting is it requires a starter dough, and this starter is a lot simpler and faster than most of the starter recipes that you're going to find out there. You literally just mix together all-purpose flour, cornstarch, water, and yeast, and then you kind of mix it and then just let it sit overnight and bring it back the next day. And the reason why there's cornstarch and all-purpose flour in there is we want to make a less glutinous flour mixture for the bun. The more I looked into tassel balls, the more it seemed like it was a steamed yeasted cake more than it was a steamed bread. And by replacing some of the all-purpose flour with a cornstarch that has absolutely no gluten inside of it, you end up with a fluffier, lighter dough. And so you'll see a lot of tricks inside this recipe that really helps to provide strength to the structure of the bun, but without the chewiness that gluten would have inside the recipe. So I start off with the starter here, and now we literally just add in all the liquids and then all the dry ingredients on top of the liquids. So for the liquids, we're gonna add, and this is gonna seem weird, is an egg white. So egg white, you can think of this as just water and protein. Since we don't have the gluten protein inside that flour, this egg white is going to provide some of that protein structure for the dough. Okay. gonna add the, okay, well, I'm gonna add the last liquid that we have, which is some vinegar in there last, and I'll explain a little bit more about it. We have all-purpose flour and then cornstarch. So again, we're reducing the gluten content of this. You can use cornstarch for this. You can use wheat starch, which I've only been able to find wheat starch at a Chinese supermarket in the baking section. You might be able to find it at a like a natural foods place, wheat, just plain old wheat starch. So again, it's wheat without the gluten. You can also use tapioca starch or potato flour because the purpose is just no gluten inside that starch to add into there. I'm adding in here baking powder. So this is double action baking powder. Okay. Gonna move it around a little bit, just dump it all into there, all at once. At this point, I'm gonna mix this all.
When you're cooking just for yourself, do you have your, I'm going to say this correctly, mise en place set up as beautifully as you do tonight?
Yes, that's the exact term, is mise en place, everything in its place. You want to be ready with all of the ingredients. For people just learning how to cook, the most fundamental thing you can possibly do is, number one, read the recipe thoroughly, so you know exactly what you're going to be doing, when you're going to be doing it, and with what. And then have all the pieces out in front of you and ready to go, including all the equipment that you're going to need. It's very traditional in all kitchens is mise en place, everything in its place. Some chefs, if you haven't had a chance to watch The Bear, you should really watch The Bear.
I did watch The Bear. Everyone should. It's fantastic.
I've had so many friends come back with like PTSD from their kitchen days. They're like, this reminds me of X, Y, and Z.
We might run our team in that brigade style.
Yes, chef. Heard. Okay, I'm gonna add in the vinegar.
Okay. Someone asked that the char siu is hard to find in small towns. They asked about canned ham, but are other pork products okay?
If you can't find tassal, it's actually not hard to find if you have a Chinese restaurant around, or if there's a place where you can find dim sum. So inside the rolling chat, I saw a lot of people from like New York, Southern California, or Northern California. If you can find any place that sells dim sum or is like a Cantonese food, so not Hunan or anything like that, or Szechuan, but a Cantonese food place, they'll have tassal on the menu, and you can just like call them up and say, hey, can I buy like half a pound of tassal or like a quarter pound of tassal? I went to Ranch 99 and I was like, can I buy a quarter pound of tassal? And they were like, okay. And then they just cut off a piece. It's a deli staple. So you can really, just like, you can go to a deli and buy a few, well, I think the minimum is like an eighth of a pound or a quarter of a pound of something. And the butcher will generally be pretty accommodating in those cases.
That's great feedback. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Let's see. You can also just make the tassal if you wanted to. Again, it's not difficult. You just have a lot of ingredients that you'll have to get your hands on. You can skip out on some of them, but it won't taste completely correct. But you can get like 80% there with like, you can get 80% there with like 70% of the ingredients. It's actually not too bad. Okay, this mixture is a little wet for me right now, so I'm just going to adjust it with a little bit of flour. Depending on how big or small the egg white you had is, you may end up with something a little drier, a little moister. What I'm just trying to do right now is clean off my hand, literally. Dough is relatively forgiving that way.
Back to pots and pans really quick. Someone, we had a guest asking if you use non-stick cookware. I think for some applications, it's the right way to go.
Yes, I do have a non-stick pan, and I made the mistake of buying an expensive non-stick pan. So I do have an all-clad nonstick pan. I regret it because nonstick pans get damaged and they die. So there's no reason to get an expensive one because it's just gonna get chucked at some point. So if you do want to do nonstick, I would say go to a restaurant supply store, go to a Smart and Final, whatever, and just buy an aluminum nonstick pan and treat it well. But nonstick pans are glorious for eggs and fish, and for searing off fish. Any restaurant that you go to, if they're doing fish that's seared, they're gonna have nonstick pans. It's just not worth it trying to do it with carbon steel, with a cast iron pan. Just nonstick. There are environmental reasons not to get nonstick. There aren't health reasons not to get nonstick because the bad stuff that comes off of the nonstick coating is created during the manufacturing process, not during the cooking process. You just have to make sure not to overheat the pan, meaning like there's nothing in the pan and it's smoking. That's when bad things are going to happen from your nonstick pan though. Okay.
Mark's wondering if wearing gloves would make it easier to knead the dough, or do you prefer to kind of have that feel?
Yeah, I would not wear gloves. You can if you want to. There's really no reason why you should want to wear gloves. Yeah, I would find the gloves probably stick to the dough more. When working with dough, just make sure that your hands are dry. And by dry, I mean you can just take the flour and you just have like the thinnest coating of a flour on your hands. And then you just do a little bit of kneading this way. And this is a pretty soft dough. And there's already a little bounce back. So there is still some gluten inside of this thing, right? So it is going to hold its structure a bit, but we're just going to go ahead and section this off into 12 pieces. And then once we portion it and flatten it out a little bit, then we're going to let the dough rest for a little bit. So 6 pieces on each half. 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
We had a guest ask if they could share this video with their high school students, so we gave them the affirmative so that they know. Going to be showing this to high schoolers to get them interested.
Honestly, like people in this world need to cook more. It allows you to control what goes into your food. So, okay, so we have our dough pieces. Just going to make sure that everything's a little bit dry. And you can roll these out if you want to using a rolling pin. So traditional methods, these two, right? Traditional methods, move this off to the side, is flatten a little bit, and you just roll the edge, and you can roll off of the edge so that you get like a thin, like, a circumference on the very end. So make sure this is all.
A little thicker still then in the center there.
Yes.
Got it.
So it's going to end up with like this flying saucer shape or fried egg shape, right? Where the center is still big and thick, and then the sides are really, really thin. So the center is clearly very thick, and then the ends are relatively thin that way. And the idea is you're going to put the filling in here and then pull the sides up. And then as you pull the sides up, the bottom will still have some thickness to it. So the filling doesn't just fall through the bottom. And as you gather all the dough up onto the top, you don't have this like unmanageable wad of dough on top because the sides are all very thin. So at this point, I'm gonna, in
The visual of a
earnest,
fried egg is very helpful. I have to say that gives me a
right, the
very
fried
good
egg
visual
shape.
clue. Yeah.
So this is a ravioli roller. So you can literally just do that also, and go through and do each one. So you can use rollers. That's one way. And honestly, I've also just found you can just pinch the edges if you want to. It takes a little bit longer, right? But if you don't want to pull out the rolling pin, it's one less thing for you to have to wash at the end of the day. And it's very easy to control if you're just like pinching the edges like this. Again, make sure your hands are lightly floured. And this is not a particularly sticky dough either.
Someone mentioned that they're going to make this a family event, which I think that this really must lend itself to really kind of all working together.
Oh yeah, yeah. The bao definitely, and even more so is the sticky rice. Like kind of like in Mexican and Hispanic families, everybody sits around, the entire freaking neighborhood sits around and starts making tamales. It's like a it's like an event to do. Same thing with zongzi, with those sticky rice, is you get the entire family together to wrap these zongzi. You know, so somebody is in charge of doing all the mise en place and the prep work for the zongzi. And then everybody comes and helps to wrap. And I actually have memories of my mom teaching me and my sister and I how to wrap the zongzi. And that was like way back when. It's really, really cool.
That's beautiful.
Because you spend hours doing it. You're essentially wrapping it for like the entire neighborhood, and you just sit and chat while you do it.
Andrew was asking about where you can find the small rolling pin that you were using.
Honestly, go to Home Depot and buy a dowel.
Okay.
Buy a dowel and just cut it, because the wood that's used on dowels, a lot of them are maple, and it will cost you like a fraction of the price than going to Williams-Sonoma to go and get it. Otherwise, you can literally just use your ravioli roller if you have one of these too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Until you've had a lot of experience, you're just not.
Oh, okay. I don't want to go over, so I'm not going to roll all of these out for us. I'll make enough for one pan. Okay, let me get the tassel out. And so again, going back to the mise en place, I have my steamer basket ready, and I have little parchment paper squares here. If you don't have a roll of parchment paper, no worries. Cupcake liners, you can literally, like, that's what cupcake liners are. It's parchment paper. You can just kind of cut the little circle out of the parchment paper that the cupcake liners are in. What you're going to do is you're going to make the bao, you're going to set it on top of like parchment paper so it doesn't stick to the steamer basket, and then stick them in the steamer basket and then go ahead and steam.
Great tip.
Okay. So I'm going to take one of these. And again, we're going to do a quick simplification of like how to wrap these, because the classic tassel ball, it's supposed to split open on the top, which is awesome. Because it's supposed to bust open. It's not, you're not going to see the fancy little pleats anyways, so it doesn't really have to be a fancy little pleat. So I try to stuff as much stuffing in here as possible because I like a lot of stuffing.
That's so interesting, because usually in kind of stuffed things like this, like an empanada, they're always like, don't put in so much, don't put in
too much, right?
This time is just about abundance. Just kind of
right.
For it.
I'm going to just pull it up as if it was a square, the two corners and then two corners up like that. Next corners and then next corners. It's probably a little thin, but that's going to work. It ain't pretty, but it is going to bust open, which it's supposed to do. And I won't have a thick clod on top either. Just going to put on top of the parchment paper, and I'm going to put it into my steamer basket. We'll do a couple more. And at this point, I already have the steamer going.
And what is it? Is that about a couple of tablespoons, a couple of heaping?
Yeah, it's 2 generous tablespoons
Okay.
on here. Realistically, the more you can put in there, the better, because I'm sure you've had like bao before and you're like, man, I wish there was more of that tasao in there. That's probably a little too aggressive.
You can make it work. We believe it.
It'll fit. Just kind of gather it on top. The mark of a true master in terms of like making tasao is there is no red on the outside, which I clearly failed on that one. But the idea is like it's completely dry and not red. So that was a fail.
It is going to taste fantastic. So
that's always the consolation, right?
I will happily eat that one. Sybil, no problem.
That's always the consolation. It'll taste fantastic. But that's the great part about tasao is, you know, I haven't learned my lesson. I'm still like stuffing it all the way through.
One of our guests wrote, there is no fail if edible. So exactly. Someone was asking, can you recommend a vegetarian filling or?
You know, I played around with it.
Yeah.
Coconut meat, like young coconut meat, kind of has that, has like the texture of fat, of the fat on the tasao. And then otherwise, you could probably use oyster mushroom. But I would saute all of that stuff first so that the liquid really comes out of the mushroom. So you have a drier mushroom mix. And then the young coconut will never kind of lose that nice, soft, fatty texture. So these are looking terrible. Okay, I'm going to go lighter on the filling.
Can you freeze these? Is this, or once you make them, do they need to go right into the?
Yeah, do not freeze these.
Okay.
Yeah. The baking powder in there, there's 2 forms of leavening. Essentially, there's the yeast and then there's the baking powder in there. I would not freeze these. It's not going to puff up the way that you want it to from the freezer. What you can do is have the tasao filling separate.
Mm-hmm. Someone was asking, I don't know if you'll know this right off but about how many calories per bun.
Oh man.
Anyone who's a calorie count, for the people who are calorie counters, we might have to look at that.
Not sure about that. The dietetics department could probably tell us. I'm going to go ahead and stick this on a steamer. I'm going to put it on a full rolling boil for the steamer.
Now, for a steamer, where should the water come in relation to the steaming basket?
So this is very interesting. Actually, I don't know if you guys can see it. This is just a regular 3-quart pot on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
And this is just a steamer basket insert. And the lid is the regular lid for my pot. So if you just go onto Amazon and you Google like stainless steel steamer inserts, you'll have lots of diameter choices. And I just chose the diameter. I went and measured my pot and it fits absolutely perfectly. And so this entire container on the bottom over here is all water. And so this steamer basket is not sitting in water at all. And this is the traditional type of setup where you can literally just keep on adding stacks on top of it.
Oh.
Yeah, and I just have 1 stack on there. But this also saves you a lot of storage space. You don't need a separate steamer. You can use the pots that you already have. Yeah. And I mean, I have I have bamboo steamers also, but they're really difficult to take care of because water gets into the fibers and you really have to air dry them completely before putting away. Whereas the stainless steel stuff, you can be a lot more, you know, a lot less careful with them.
And they all, if you had multiple stacks, they still cook in the same amount of time, or do you ever?
Yeah.
Do you know? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Which is great. Okay, so while that's going, let's start on the sticky rice. So sticky rice isn't actually traditionally for New Year's. These sticky rice, 粽子, they are actually meant to be eaten during a festival in May, in around the May timeframe. But it's actually a great timing if you want to practice a bit for May. The story behind this is there was an advisor to an emperor in China. He was very, very influential, and when the I guess administration changed, the emperor changed, he was no longer influential with the new emperor. And so he left the capital in like sorrow and shame because he was no longer influential anymore. And he was so depressed when he went back to his hometown that he committed suicide by jumping into the river. And the locals, who all loved him and really appreciated him, threw these packets of rice into the water so that the fish and all the sea creatures would eat the rice and not eat his body. So that's the super depressing story behind these.
How to banter.
Okay. But the idea behind this is you want to wrap these in a way where they won't bust open when you cook, but that they are flexible enough still where the rice can absorb up enough water and expand while they're cooking. Everything is fairly simple in terms of like the preparation. It's all just marination, and it's very easy marination. There's not a lot of weird fancy ingredients. You can use pork butt or pork shoulder. I went ahead and decided to be super extra and went with pork belly. So you can see that big old line of fat over there. And these get boiled in water for 2 to 3 hours. And that long boiling process essentially melts all this fat, and it gets sucked up into the sticky rice, and you just have the moistest, most unctuous, most awesomely flavored sticky rice ever. The flavor of these 粽子 essentially comes from whatever fat you have along with the meat. That also really tenderizes the sticky rice. And this wonderful like smell, I wish you guys can smell it, of the bamboo leaves. The bamboo leaves you can buy. I looked real quickly. You can find them off of Amazon also, but again, Ranch 99, gotta love yourself a Ranch 99 or a Chinese supermarket these days. Very easy to find. Mistake number one for most people is not hydrating these for long enough. So give yourself about 2 days to fully rehydrate them, because you want them absolutely pliable and flexible when you're working with them. Mistake number two that people make is they don't hydrate and marinate the rice for long enough. The rice has to suck up a fair amount of liquid before you wrap it into the 粽子. And then mistake number three that people generally make is in the wrapping. Okay, lots of different ways to wrap 粽子. And I'm gonna teach you a kind of a hybrid method. What I find is like the easiest way to wrap these 粽子. And we're gonna use my yoga mat towel here as a quick demonstration. If you're doing this solo, right, just tie off your string to someplace so that there's some tension on the string. When you're wrapping 粽子, imagine this is the 粽子, although it's your 粽子is not going to be cylindrical shaped. It's going to be more angular than this. But if you can wrap this method, this is the exact same method that the French use to tie off their roasting loins. It actually works fantastic with 粽子. What you do is you start off with a bite of the rope. So a bite just means, you know, a loop of the rope. Twist twice, once, twice. Okay. and you grab the loin and you loop it through the loin. Oops, and you loop it through the loin. Okay, and set it down. And then you have that.
Okay.
Hold on to the running end of the rope. Okay. Twist twice. Once, twice. And loop back again. Just loop the loin again. This ratchets and cinches itself and holds temporarily. So it won't loosen. Okay. And that's one of the great things about the way that, you tie this down is it still does hold some tension in here because you don't want the tamale to kind of loosen as you wrap it. So I'm going to hold it again, that bite, twist twice, loop around the bottom, and ratchet.
It's wonderfully clever to practice in this way instead of on your very expensive piece of meat.
Well, and so if you're wrapping a rib roast, if you're wrapping a pork loin or anything like that, this is the way to do it. So on one side you have these like nice little knots. You flip in this case the yoga mat towel under, and you go ahead and loop. Sorry, this is a really long piece of rope. And then you just loop the chain upwards.
Now, when it is your loin, is how much tension? Is it kind of just enough to get it to a consistent shape?
Yeah, just so that it's a consistent shape. I'm going to try to do a side profile here. There's a little bit of indentation.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like you're wearing jeans that are 2 sizes too small for you, right?
Another good visual clue. Thank you.
There's just enough tension where it's kind of holding everything in, but it's not like a compression, right?
Got it. Okay.
And this is exactly what you're going to do with the zongzi also. You have 2 ends. Sorry, I'm too far away. You have 2 ends, and you're just going to tie a regular square knot, that beginning knot of when you tie your shoelaces. You're just going to tie 2 square knots at the very end, and then that's it. And then you essentially have a very well tucked in loin, yoga towel, or zongzi in this case. So let's go ahead and that was my yoga towel.
Back to the dough really quickly. There was one more question about that. Can you use instant yeast?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. It's the regular dry instant yeast that I used. Okay. I'm gonna lay down. I'm gonna lay down my chicken towel. And again, there are lots of different methods in wrapping zongzi. Some use 2 leaves, some use 3 leaves. I find the easiest version to be with 3 leaves. Okay. I've got my.
Is the length pretty consistent, or are there varying lengths? Is this?
Oh my God, all sorts of varying lengths here, right?
Okay.
And so you just gauge how much filling you put into the zongzi based on the leaf sizes that you have. So there's a lot of picking and choosing also, but you do want to work with at least the first 2 leaves that you work with. You want them to be about the same size. Overlap them. Tails opposite to each other. Overlap them. I usually match up the center stem, I guess, the center rib. Okay. And bend and twist at the same time. Oops. Bend and twist so that you have a pocket. And I'm doing this towards you guys, hopefully, so that you have a pocket. So maybe I'll do that motion again.
Yeah.
So bend and fold, that twisting motion, and then you have a pocket.
is it both leaves that are kind of forming the,
Yes,
okay.
it's both leaves that are forming together. So I'll do it again. Maybe I'll do it with a different leaf this time.
They were asking again where the bamboo, could you mention again where the bamboo leaves, you got those?
Yeah, Branch 99.
Okay, for your
Yeah,
Chinese grocery. We'll
any
have,
Chinese grocery place. I've also seen them on Amazon. Like Amazon has everything. But really any Chinese supermarket. If you go into like Chinatown, the Chinese supermarkets will have it there too. I went into the Oakland Chinatown and they had them. They had them there as well. Okay, at this point, fill in with sticky rice. This is going to drip. I put 2 big old scoops of sticky rice in there, a big old blob of the marinated meat, rehydrated shiitake mushrooms. I'm going to put 2 pieces in there. And then these, again, Chinese supermarket, rehydrated dry shrimp. These you can actually find in regular supermarkets in the Mexican ingredients aisle. If you don't make it to a Chinese supermarket, but also findable at Chinese supermarkets.
someone was asking if you can you use banana leaves, or is this really?
It'll be a very different flavor.
Okay.
I've seen banana leaves in Cantonese cooking. There's also a version that's used that uses lily leaves. And those, it's usually chicken. It's usually a chicken version for the lily leaves. Okay, so if you're going to use a third leaf, it's just to reinforce the lip that's facing you, to raise it up a little bit. So don't be ashamed if you want to use a third leaf to give yourself like a little bit more cover. This point, push down, one side over, other side over. Bend inward. Sorry, I have a stem like right there. These stems, if you don't take care of them, they'll poke the leaves right through. Fold the 2 sides in, fold over top. So you'll end up with one flat end and another kind of flat end here. So I'll do it again.
And it looks like you want it just really all covered, like completely.
Yeah, you want all the rice to stay in place. Down, one side over, the other side over. And then
It looks like the leaves are pretty forgiving for you to try a couple times while you're.
Yes, the leaves are forgiving if you've had them soaking for 2 days. If you try to rush that process, then it's not going to be, the leaves will not be forgiving, and then they'll crack and then they'll split. So now, ooh, it did bust open. The good news is, if it does bust open, dump all of your ingredients back out and then try it all over again. Okay.
This whole process seems like, while part of the allure, right, is that it takes time, and it's to not be afraid of some of the labor that goes into this, that is part of the recipe and part of what goes into this and bringing people together.
It's also meant as an activity to do with like a group of people. So
about lotus leaves. Have you ever used lotus leaves, or can you?
Yes, they are very large, and they're usually used with the chicken filling. Yeah, and it's called the English translation for that. It would be the sticky rice chicken when you go to dim sum.
Is the rice that you're using, is that cooked or is it still raw?
It is absolutely raw.
Okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely raw, and it's been sitting in the marinade. Oh, I'm gonna use that third leaf. And it's been sitting in the marinade, so it's had a chance to suck up a fair amount of water or a fair amount of liquid. And in the center, one end, the other end. And fold down. That's better.
Beautiful.
Okay. So now with a piece of string, let's start off with 2.
Oh,
2. This might only need 2 of them going around this way. Flip it over.
what was the length on that string? Is that about a yard or?
It's about a yard, about a meter. What I do is I just wingspan it. So I hold one end and I stretch it until it covers my wingspan.
Got it. Beth, yeah, when we, again, after tonight, we will take the recording, we'll have it captioned, and then we'll get it up on the site, and we can send that out also to everyone as well. So you'll get a chance to watch this in slow motion in practice.
And then I'm just going to close it off with 2 knots, 2 square knots at the top. This thing was relatively small, and so it only needed 2 loops around. The idea is 2 knots to stabilize this way, 2 knots to stabilize this way. I didn't do the nice pretty thing and cut off all the ends and then the tails, but this is what the wrapped piece will look like. And, you know, some indentation, not a lot. There's still a lot of room for this thing to expand as it sucks up a lot of water in the boiling process. So these will end up getting boiled for like 2-3 hours, and they'll puff up. Yeah, we're already at 7 o'clock. I don't think we have enough time for another one.
Oh, I think people are happy to stick around and learn from you.
You get, so yes, I see in the chat, you get different flavors if you use different leaves. That is absolutely true. So I'll show you what a finished version is. So this one was slightly larger. So I put 3 knots on it and then looped 3 times back around this way. These, after they've been boiled for the 2 or 3 hours, take them, like, let them kind of cool until you can handle it, drain, and then cool out on the counter or so. And then you can either refrigerate them or freeze them, and they reheat very, very easily. When you reheat it, just dunk it into boiling water and make sure that it's heated all the way through. So you can do that by sticking a probe thermometer into it and then making sure that it comes up to 155, and then you're good to go, and it's all reheated.
So for the boiling process, do you stack them on top of one another? Does it need to be a single layer?
Try to go 2 layers on it.
2 layers.
Yeah, you don't want to go too much deeper than that, or else you will have to kind of rotate them to make sure they all get completely saturated. So here.
Oh gosh, look at that.
And this is why I use pork belly instead of a super lean shoulder or pork butt. But for the marinade, right, I just used one type of dark soy, and then that's it. I used the Kiko Man, which is a dark soy on this, and this is kind of the color that you get. You can use a lighter soy if you wanted to, but I wish you could smell it. It smells fantastic, but it's super easy to make. And the toughest part really is just learning how to wrap. And you can see, like, the first one I tried to wrap kind of fell apart. Just empty it all out and start over again. No harm, no foul. Yeah.
What did you say the internal temperature should be when you're
Yeah, 155. 155 is fine. Yeah. If you can take it straight from the freezer, rock hard, and then just put it in water, boil it, and I would say about 10-15 minutes on a slow boil. And then you can start sticking the probe into the zongzi to check the internal temperature. Yeah. Oh my God, I want to eat that.
When you serve those to your guests, do you typically, have you already cut the strings and you bring them to them serve them in the leaves, or?
I would cut the strings. Yeah, because it's a little difficult, right? If you don't cut the strings. Okay, so my taco ball exploded.
Yay!
I was a little too careful. This is probably the last one. But the bun itself, how should I do this?
That's beautiful. And someone was asking about using a microwave to warm things up. Can you?
You can. So if you're going to warm up the zongzi in the microwave, I would put it in a bowl with a little bit of water on the bottom and then cover the entire bowl so it kind of steams inside the microwave in order to get that. So my wrapping technique wasn't quite there. But here you go. I probably could have cooked the sauce a little bit longer because that kind of really melted out and became a little bit too liquidy. But this is kind of the texture that you want inside the bun, is kind of loose and open. Smells great. Still tastes great.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I love salsa ball.
That looks amazing. Someone else was asking about the good luck cookies, with the round ones with the almonds. Do you know what that is called? Is it
just almond cookies?
Oh, okay.
Almond cookies. I would make my own almond cookies. I love almond cookies. In the old school days, the almond cookies, they used to be made with lard in them, so at least it was a natural saturated fat. These days you get like a palm oil or like a hydrogenated soy oil in them or so not the greatest. So if you make it at home, at least you can use butter.
Got it. That sounds delicious. Someone was asking, hey, do we have any beer and wine recommendations for the dishes that you made tonight, or any other kind of beverage of choice?
Beer. So for the zongzi, honestly, I'm thinking just like a pilsner of some sort, something light and crisp. Nothing too heavy on that, because the zongzi is fairly heavy, and then you have a lot of like oiliness on the pork. So I think especially if you're using pork belly, so I think a crisp pilsner of some sort would go really well. The taso ball, it's fairly sweet, right? And it's got a lot of spices inside of it. So if you want to go for a nice saison, I think that would be amazing with this. Trying to think what else. Honestly, you know something? Wintertime, you might want to go for a stout of some sort, because even something like dark and malty would go with this, with the taso ball. Yeah.
Well, those all sound amazing.
Yeah. It's easier to pair Chinese food with beer than it is with wine.
Well, thank you. And someone was mentioning that they kosher, but it was so nice that you know that there are other options, and I think we kind of covered some of those with that. If you're going to make this with chicken, for instance, what kind of leaves those would traditionally go in. So it was great information.
Right. So, and you know something, the lotus leaves are a lot bigger and all in one big piece. So it's actually easier to wrap in the lotus leaves than it is to wrap inside the bamboo leaves. But the taste is very, very different. The taste is a lot stronger on the bamboo leaves.
Okay. Oh, could you mention what kind of rice you used again? Some people were asking about what type of glutinous rice was it?
Yeah,
Jasmine
so
rice, was it glutinous rice? What?
it's glutinous rice. I just happen to use this in the Bay Area because Shochikubai is here. They also have a glutinous rice. What you're looking for, and I'll pour a little bit out into my hand. It's a very, very opaque grain. It's a very opaque grain. I don't know if that comes out. It's a very opaque, and
Let's see if we can get our team to switch that back to the in a second so that everyone can see that.
I'll show you the difference between what a sweet, like a glutinous rice and a not glutinous rice will look like. You see how the not glutinous rice here, it looks a little bit more translucent. Hopefully it comes across on the camera. It looks a little bit more translucent than the glutinous rice. So pick up a glutinous rice because this is not sticky in the correct way. This is sticky in the correct way. But there are also long-grained versions of it. So just because it's long or short doesn't really tell you anything. Look for the coloration. You're looking for some dark white milkiness. That's right here. This is the glutinous one. And then this is the not glutinous one over here.
Is that the same as a sushi rice or is that different still?
Different. Yeah,
okay.
Sushi rice will look like this, will look like the translucent version. Look for sweet rice or look for glutinous rice.
Okay.
So this brand just happens to say sweet rice, right? But on the ingredient side, I don't know, on the ingredient side, it actually says glutinous rice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, the comments are just blowing up with thank yous and how much everyone enjoyed this. And
I wish the tasal looked better. They taste fantastic, but it's, yeah, kind of difficult to do it spur in the moment in front of people.
Well, Virginia's going to make a run at this for her Super Bowl party, it sounds like. So that's fantastic.
Sybil, we have one more question too. Sorry, I wanted to,
Yes.
Ken just sent me one that an attendee had emailed him and asked, asking, are there any low carb options for sticky rice or the bao dough? Thank you very much, Carol Lamb Jones.
Oh, a low carb version of the sticky rice. No. Yeah,
different.
Yeah, you got to go whole hog on this. Yeah. The only thing I can think of is for the sticky rice is literally just put more of the meats in, more of the meat and the mushroom in, and less of the sticky rice in there. Yeah, and for the bao, honestly, I haven't tried this with a like a keto based flour, like soy flours or something like that. But if any type of dough would be worth experimenting, you know, on the keto side with, it would probably be this, because it doesn't want gluten in the dough. So that's one thing that keto flours and non-wheat based flours already have going for it. So it might be worthwhile to experiment.
Great. Well, Sybil, thank you so much. And I want to assure everyone, we're going to get this presentation up as soon as we can. I think the last one we did for the holidays is ready. And I know that that's imminent if it's not on our website already. We'll get this going as soon as possible so that people can enjoy this for their Lunar New Year celebrations. Again, we've got more information about the Alumni Association that just got dropped into the chat. And thank you again. You are a wonderful partner to the Alumni Association. We just love working with you, and you are always so kind and generous with your time and your expertise and your cooking. And you can send your address to me privately and I will come before your party tonight. So have a lot of fun with your party tonight.
I love cooking with you guys, and I love the questions that everybody asks. So that's fantastic.
Well, we have the best alumni. What can I say?
Oh, Sybil, before we go, did you want to mention the entrepreneurship symposium and have me post the link in the chat too?
Oh, that would be fantastic. Just as a reminder, thank you, Charlene. We have the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Symposium coming up in April. So link will be up in the chat. We're also going to be having an entrepreneurship affinity group happy hour / casual demo day, February 23rd. Look for that link coming into your email box soon.
Thank you. And that part of that is a pitch competition. The entrepreneurship symposium, right, is a pitch competition. It's really wonderful, and people can, tune in from home. We can make sure we have information about that on our website as well. So it's a really incredible product, and you've been very kind of generous in featuring a lot of our Gator entrepreneurs who've been very successful and who give great tips to those looking to follow in their footsteps. So we appreciate that.
Yay.
Okay. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Happy Lunar New Year. Everyone stay dry out there and safe. And, if you want to send us pictures of your attempts, you can send those to our alumni email address, alumni@sfsu.edu. And we would love to see that. But for now, thank you once more, Sybil. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening.